And welcome everyone. I'm Jason, your moderator for this time slot of the session with Dr. Peter Lau. This session will be recorded, and Dr. Lau will be giving his sharing for 30 minutes, and then we will have a 10 minutes Q&A session. And after that, we would like to have our audience to leave the room, and we will do an interview with Peter Lau on a one-on-one basis. So for now, let Peter Lau to start his sharing. We can let Peter Lau to start his sharing now. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jason. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. If you were here with us at 3 o'clock, but also the new listeners, new audience. So I have been talking about my scientific journey in the last hours. So now I will talk about how I started my business in 3D printing and in drone education. So just to recap a little bit for those of you who are not here earlier, so a little bit about my background. So I came to Canada from Hong Kong when I was 15. So I was born in Hong Kong and grew up my teenage years here in Toronto. I went to McGill University for my undergrad in biochemistry and minor in biotechnology. And then I did my master's at University of Toronto, the Department of Laboratory Medicine and Pathobiology. Then I worked a few years as a microbiologist in several different labs, even overseas in Cambridge, UK, and also with the National Research Council in Ottawa. And after that, I went back to grad school just before I turned 30 to do my PhD in biophysics at the University of Guelph. So my business journey in this hour, it's not suddenly one day I decided to start a business. So I came from a business family. My father has a textile business back in Hong Kong and also here in Canada, but he's retired now. So I have a lot of business influence even when I was a kid, because there are more people in my family in business than in science, of course. I have only one uncle who's a chemist, and all the rest of my family is in business. So it's kind of, it's not like something happened one day and I changed my mind and I don't want to be a scientist anymore and I just go into business. But even when I did my undergrad, I was thinking at the back of my head, like, I have to apply my knowledge to solve some problems. So that's the correct mindset of an entrepreneur. So instead of scientists who are studying something in nature and then just writing papers, and then maybe the knowledge can be used 20 years or 30 years down the road to solve something. I want to be solving real world problems like as soon as possible, not 20 years down the road. So there's this mindset. Also, I'm not someone who's very interested in one thing and then kept dwelling upon that thing. So that's more of a mindset of someone in academia. So most professors, they will study 1 to 3 things and then study that all their life. And they may or may not know about other areas, but my interest is very broad. So I think that I'm more like suitable for a business career than an academic. And even one of my grad school supervisors told me, oh, I think you should go into business. That's my supervisor when I did my master's. But I kind of didn't listen to him, and I did my PhD anyway. And afterwards, he was right. Now I'm in business. So yeah, it depends on your personality. If you have strong interest in one or several things, then academia is good. But if you have many broad interests, you like to solve real world problems, you have a personality that is not risk averse, you like to take chances, then becoming an entrepreneur is definitely the way to go. So after my PhD studies, I have to do postdoctoral research. And at that time, I came across this amazing machine in a museum in the US on a trip. And that was around 2010. And what I saw was a 3D printer, which is able to make anything that you just design. It's like something out of science fiction, right? You have always heard about these machines, but I never imagined it's so small. You can even have it on your desk, and at your office you can have like a whole bunch making things. So at that time, I had the idea of need to start a business in 3D printing, and also as a biochemist, I've always heard about these ideas of maybe in the distant future, people can create like organs for transplant. So it's basically 3D printing technology, just that we are not there yet at this point. But in 3D printing, there's a subspecialty called 3D bioprinting, and currently it is used to not directly making parts for transplant. Of course, you cannot print an organ yet, but people have been using 3D bioprinting right now to create tissue, three-dimensional tissue cultures for testing, for experiments, for cosmetic companies. Instead of testing on animals, they are printing these tissue with human stem cells to test their products. So there are these applications as well. And that is basically how I got into 3D printing. It was inspired by seeing this one machine. And ever since then, I started my company MakerWish. We have been providing equipment to many schools across Canada, and also other companies, including engineering firms or dental offices, and also architects. And we also provide the 3D printing and design service to different clients as well. And finally, because of my scientific background, like during grad school, I have to teach a lot of students. So I decided to have an educational component too. So we organize courses and camps. These are before the pandemic, of course, for kids to come in and learn the technology, and also sometimes going to schools and help them run classes that are in design and 3D printing. So that is the three things that we do. And also last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, there were a big shortage on face shields because of disruption in the supply chain from Asia. So we actually collaborated with another company. They sponsored us, and we helped them make about 3,000 face shields, and provided them to hospitals and clinics at the outset of the pandemic. So that was a little bit of contribution that we did last year, and they're all 3D printed using our machines. So that's on the 3D printing side. And my other business is in drone education. So drones are often mentioned in movies and in the media, sometimes you see these displays of drones like fireworks, and sometimes you hear about drones are being used in wars to like attack enemies, but we're not talking about those special uses. So what we're doing is we have been partner with Transport Canada to be a drone flight school. We're the only one in Richmond Hill right now, and I think there are only 2 schools in York region. And we train people to safely fly their drones and get their license to do so. So currently, RoverWiz has trained many students to get their Transport Canada license, because you need a drone pilot license if you need to fly a drone that's over 250 grams. And it's not an easy test. You have to learn a lot about aviation knowledge, like the general knowledge for being a real pilot. You have to learn things related to that. Almost like, I would say 80% of what a plane pilot needs to learn. So we train people to do that, and we provide equipment as well. And we also do drone photography service as well under RoverWiz. So this has been going on for the past 4 years. So my 3D printing business, about 7 years. My drone business, about 4 years. And previously, I've been a scientist for about 12 years. So maybe we can start off with some Q&A if you guys are interested in hearing more about the business aspects. And maybe some of you are wondering, why would scientists start 2 businesses that are kind of different from your day-to-day business? Or maybe some of you are in the scientific field and are thinking about doing something similar, or starting something new.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So if we can start the Q&A session now if you want. So if anyone have any question they would like to ask Peter, you can type your question in the chat and to everyone, so we can see your question and have Peter answer. So does anyone have any question they would like to ask Peter?
Hi, Shelley. I see that your question, what is the future of biotech? Okay, so can you be a little bit more specific? You mean the field? So, because so from what I have mentioned, like eventually we're talking about maybe 30 years down the road, it will eventually be possible to create organ transplant replacements using 3D bioprinting, but it may not be printing something exactly the shape or the morphology of your organ. So for example, I think the golden grail right now is kidney transplant. So because there are lots of patients waiting for a kidney and they actually die before it's their turn to get a transplant. So if we're able to use technology to create a kidney based on the patient's stem cells, and it does not have to be exactly the same shape. It could be smaller, it could be simpler, but as long as it works, then it is usable. Or maybe even like a mini kidney that say you have only 30% of the capacity of your existing kidney, but then you can make 3 of them and put it there. So something like that. That's really a very exciting field that's going to happen. And it's all linked to stem cells technology as well.
Thank you for the question. Okay.
Okay, so Andrew has a question about the different sizes of 3D printers, and is it a size of a paper printer or a dishwasher machine? So right now there are 3D printers can be very small. Yeah, like the size of a paper printer. Actually, I have one here that I can show you. Just this one of our smaller printers. So this is a small 3D printer. You see this plate here is smaller than a sheet of paper. So, but it's of course it's 3-dimensional. So it can be something so small. I think the footprint is smaller than your typical paper printer. It's about, I think the footprint is about the size of a large laptop computer. And there are bigger ones to print larger things. Of course, they all call them 3D printers, but there are ones that are used to print buildings now. So those are the size of like a construction crane. And then there are some that are printing the chassis of cars. So those are some new areas as well. But in general, they are the size of regular printer. But they take a few hours to make things. It's not like Star Trek, it just appears out of nowhere in no time. It takes time. So, and how do they print things out? Yes, that's a good question. So there are 7 or 8 different technologies in 3D printing, but the most popular 3 technologies, the first one it's called FDM, or it's using filament. It's called fused deposition modeling. So you basically have the machine melting strands of filaments. So it's mostly plastic. And then it lays it down layer by layer to draw out your 3D object. And it's very precise and accurate so that your object will be exactly appearing like how you design it. Another technology is using laser to convert a liquid chemical into a solid form, because the laser light is able to cure this liquid into a solid, but it does it layer by layer to build up the object. And this technology is very precise and very high resolution. And then there are the third most common technology is using also using laser light, but it works on powder, fusing the powder into a solid. So those are the different ways how it works. So Jan is asking what types of careers are in 3D printing. So that's a very good question. So right now, a lot of people who are doing 3D design, because 3D printing is just learning how to operate the machine. But actually, in order to print things, you need to design them first. So there's a big career in 3D design, and it does not have to be like something entirely new, because people have been doing 3D designs for ages. So most of the good 3D designers, they study mechanical engineering, or they are in programs that design characters for games. So the 3D modelers, they usually also work for gaming companies to create characters in games, or they design characters in cartoons. Those are the popular careers in 3D printing, but in 3D design. But if you're talking about just 3D printing, then it's more like a technical job. So you may have careers that are aligned with surface bureaus. There are companies that just do this, and if you're specially trained for 3D printing, then you can go into those companies to help them. So Tim has a question about personal ambition in regards of my business. So yeah, I would prefer to not reveal too much at this point, but it has to do with, I guess, scaling up, certain ways of scaling up. So Jason has a question about, do everyone participating in the event? Oh, okay, the survey, yes. So Jason's asking you to fill in the survey. Yeah, are there any questions about maybe drones or other questions about 3D printing? So maybe I can talk a little bit about, okay, so Jen said for both 3D printing or a drone flying career, what kind of education is needed? So no experience on both, but like to know more. Yes, so for 3D printing, if I were to hire more people, I would prefer them to be in mechanical engineering, I think. Mechanical engineering would be the best way to go into 3D printing because you actually learn a lot of how to design parts. And if we have more people who understands how to design parts that can be made for customers, so mechanical parts are a good business field for 3D printing because you'll have customers that repeatedly come back to you for those parts, and you design them once, you sell them for a long time, not like a one-off project. For drone flying career, I think the point of getting people into drones, like for Transport Canada, it's actually getting young people interested in aviation, because drone is a kind of easy way to get into aviation. And so I only really recommend people going into drones if you are, of course, if it's a hobby, that's fine. But if you're seriously thinking about a career in drone flying, then you also should be someone thinking about the aviation industry, whether it's becoming a pilot or you want to be an engineer that can fix planes, like the aeronautical engineers. Those are the career choices that it would be good to prepare you for, like a drone flying career. So I guess for a short answer, in both industries, engineering is probably easier for you to get into these fields than background in science. But most important thing is to be passionate about it. Are there any other questions?
So hi, Dr. Lau. I am Carmen Chan, one of the organizer. Yeah, like your presentation about like in the STEM and in science and being an entrepreneur is very amazing. I would just like to know more about like when on your path to switching to become an entrepreneur, there are always risks come with your career and as an entrepreneur. Like you have to pay up capital, you have to anticipate the market, and all sort of the stuff and the marketing. So how do you overcome all those challenges?
Thank you, Carmen, for listening in and for your very interesting question. So, my advice for young people who are thinking about starting a business, whether you're coming from a science background or an engineering background or a business background, is I guess you just start small and test your waters in the beginning. So for myself, I'm lucky because I kind of see that 3D printing is something that is going to become very big. Uh, it's kind of like in the 90s with the internet. It's in its very beginning, and no one knows much about it. And now, like everything is about the internet. So we kind of know that 3D printing is growing very fast. So that's the uh, lucky thing on our side. And you kind of have to start small and see how it's going, and then just eventually build it up. Like you don't rent like a 20,000 square feet space like from day one and hope that people will just come in. So you network a lot with people in your industry. You try and talk to buyers from schools, from government. Yeah, you kind of have to. If you're in a B2B business, you have to have good relations with the sector, the industry people. Um, for us, it's both B2B and B2C because 3D printing is becoming more popular to consumers now. A lot of people have one in their house to make things, but it's still not very common, like a microwave, of course. But eventually, maybe it will become like that. Right now, it's still in a growth phase. So we are fortunate to be in the industry early, and it's still growing very fast. So I think for business, there's always risk, but you just have to manage those risks and um, eventually build things up. And you really have to watch your expenses carefully in the beginning. And yeah, you can't just buy anything you like
So
for your company.
you do need some accounting skills, and also you need some marketing sense, and also you need some IT sense. So for those kids, students who are really interested in 3D printing right now, a lot of schools do have design labs, and some kids are like they can afford to buy a drone and play it like every weekend. What would you suggest them to prepare for this career?
Yes. So for uh, young people who are thinking about career in 3D printing or in drones, like I said earlier, an engineering education would be preferable if you want to go into those areas. Although uh, an education in science is fine too, but in engineering they really train you to have those skills. I would also advise young people to maybe if you're still in high school, think about going into co-op programs, because companies that are innovative into new technologies, they often hire co-op students, and then so think about schools like Waterloo that have very strong co-op programs. You almost are guaranteed a job after you graduate. Like if your performance is good during those co-op terms. If you're in science, it may be harder to go into these tech fields, but it's possible. If you have strong interests outside of school in these tech areas, you can still do it. Also, another thing I have not mentioned is if you want to start a business in technology after your undergrad, maybe work a few years and then go get an MBA. It would help a lot. For myself, I don't have that experience, but when I did my minor in biotechnology, I took many business courses. So that kind of made up for a little bit of that.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Lau. So a well-rounded learning in science as a good foundation, and also some exposure in business mindset, and have some accounting skills, and also some like marketing and product knowledge is very important to prepare for this path. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lau. And there are some questions at the chat.
Okay, so do you have? Okay, so let me see. The next question is so Tim Ho is asking the hottest subfield other than organ 3D printing. So this is question about 3D printing. What other fields are hot? So right now we're not doing 3D bioprinting yet, but I'm just saying that some research institutes, they're doing that for research purposes. But other important subfields. So I think it's almost like what can you use your smartphone for? There's so many applications. Like it's really hard to say which ones are the hottest. I would say dentistry advanced a lot with 3D printing, because previously to create a device that's one of a kind for a patient, it will take a technologist like a couple of days, or you have to go back to the dentist like in 2 weeks' time to get your implant made. But now with 3D printing, they can do it like in hours, or even the next day you come back, you already have the device designed for you. So other areas are anything one of a kind, or a small run production. So meaning that if you need this particular machine part, but you only need like 500 of them or less, then it's much more cost effective to make it with 3D printing, because you can have prototypes done very quickly. If there are changes, you don't have to change the mold and then have all the production done again. You can just change a little and then make a new temporary mold using 3D printing, and then it's good enough to make about 500 pieces. So these are areas that can be very hot. It's using 3D printing to become more cost effective. In jewelry, you can have one-of-a-kind jewelry that will not be possible previously. Anything customization can be done very well with 3D printing. And finally, something also related to aviation, in building or making new planes or even spaceships. lot of designs are done with 3D printing because you can create things that are much lighter and it will save fuel. So technologies that are trying to save fuel, some planes already have some parts that are 3D printed in order to make the plane lighter, so that it will save on fuel and fly for a longer time. So it's basically something like your smartphone. You can do so many things with it. The sky is really the limit. It's a whole new way of manufacturing. And the next question, do you have any advice for artists or creative side of people that want to start to get into 3D printing or drones as a new tool for their career? Yeah, so maybe we can talk about this maybe after today's session, but of course we can recommend certain equipment, but maybe it's not interesting for everyone here. But for creative people, I would say 3D printing is more about 3D design, inventing things, or conceptualizing new objects, new inventions, new equipment. A drone is more like a tool for, right now it's photography and videography from a new perspective, but eventually I think drones will be important for automated delivery of packages. That's a very big area because companies like Amazon and Google, they're already testing automated drones. Imagine like Tesla, but auto drive, autopilot, and then delivering packages to your backyard. That's going to be a very big area in the next 10 years. And those careers may require people in artificial intelligence, AI, like how these automated drones can analyze the traffic pattern and avoid colliding with each other and successfully deliver your package. Yeah, so that's more for like engineers and scientists. So I don't think drones have too much to do with creative people beside the photography and videography side of things at this point. Mm-hmm. Or maybe some sort of animation is possible. Like at the Olympics, you can see a bunch of drones putting on a show. There are creative elements there too. So my experience in becoming a drone instructor, it's quite good actually. So because I started before the laws or the new drone rules passed, so they were actually looking for people to start drone schools at the time, and that's how I got into this area. And it's not too difficult, but I would say right now, since the rules have come into effect, it may be a little bit harder, and also the industry is becoming very popular or more saturated with the COVID pandemic. So the COVID pandemic, as you know, there are a lot less traveling going on. So many flight or plane pilots, they got laid off, and some of them even they came to us because they wanted to start a new career in being a drone flight pilot. And so I think over time, it may be harder to get into the drone industry. But if you think about the drone industry, one important area is surveying and mapping. So your educational background can be in those areas. So this is could be in civil engineering. which is important in doing surveys. So imagine using a drone with a laser scanner, and that can scan a job site or a park area for nature conservation. So these are all career possibilities with drones. But if you just want to be a drone flight instructor, it's not hard.
Thank you, Dr. Peter Lau, for all of his experience and his insights. For now, we'll be starting the one-on-one interview session soon. Everyone except Dr. Peter Lau and the moderator, please return to the main room as we will conduct the interview soon afterwards. Thank you.